Well, hey there, freaks. Welcome back to Tales from the Crypt. It's your boy Marty Bent. We've got an incredible episode for you today. Sat down with André Neves from Koala Studios, and we had a long-ranging conversation over some beers. Did not get as inebriated this conversation as I did with Alex Ottoman of Lolly. Sorry if I was a little bit too intoxicated by the end of the episode there. But sometimes you get lost in the sauce. You know, it happens. It happens every once in a while. Jesus forgives. So I'm asking for forgiveness if I was a little too intoxicated there. Speaking of getting lost in the sauce, don't get lost in the sauce this tax season, which is coming up fast. It means it's time to talk about crypto taxes. I know you freaks don't want to talk about them, but, you know, you may want to think about them. Don't fall into the trap of selling your crypto to pay your taxes. BlockFi helps crypto investors by providing U.S. dollar funding using your crypto as collateral. You get your crypto back at the end of the loan. It's that simple. BlockFi customers are using these loans for anything from buying a house to funding a business. Visit blockfi.com/talesfromthecrypt to learn more about using your crypto without having to sell today. That's blockfi.com/talesfromthecrypt. Check it out, freaks. They also got a new interesting interest-earning product there. So definitely head over to blockfi.com/talesfromthecrypt to check that out as well. I was mentioning the episode with the CEO of Lolly earlier, and Lolly is actually our second sponsor today. So Lolly is an extension that you download. You go to the extension store, whatever your browser is, and Lolly lets you earn up to 30% back in Bitcoin when you shop online. They have partnerships with 500-plus merchants, like Overstock, SeatGeek, Priceline, Hotwire, Walmart, CVS, Jet, Best Buy, Gap, Macy's, Hilton, Marriott. The names just keep on rolling. They've worked out these relationships for you to help you get cashback deals in the form of Bitcoin. It's safe and easy. Head over to lolly.com/ref/TFTC. That's lolly.com/ref/TFTC. We'll put all these links in the bio of this episode. And I hope you freaks enjoy it. I had a really fun time with André. Really excited what he's building with Lightning Koala at Koala Studio. And I think you freaks are going to love this conversation. Enjoy.
Tales from the Crypt.
What is up, freaks? Welcome back to Tales from the Crypt. We find ourselves here on a Wednesday night, another night in the relegation studio, a different studio than the studio I recorded with Alex Adelman last night. I got a little tipsy last night, drinking a lot of whiskey. We switched over to beer for tonight. We're drinking some Brooklyn Pilsner. My mother's calling me, Mom. I'll call you back later. Hope you're listening. And I'm very excited to have this conversation. This is actually a follow-up conversation of an earlier episode of Tales from the Crypt I had with Lightning Koala. I have this co-founder and co-CTO of Koala Studios in the studio with me. I'd like you freaks to meet André Neves. Excuse me. André, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, man. Excited to be here.
Thanks for coming on, dude.
Yeah.
So, had a good conversation with Lightning Koala, probably about when the chain code residency was. When was that?
Late October.
Late October.
Yeah, it was probably, yeah.
Yeah, so about 4 months ago.
Right.
Koala Studios was just an idea, an incepted idea.
That's correct.
At that point in time. And what was it? Last week you guys launched
Tuesday.
Last Tuesday you launched your first game in Lightning Chess. Was happy to play and tweet about it. It was very fun. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of what's been going on with Koala Studio, let's learn more about you. How the hell did you get here? How the hell did you find Bitcoin?
Oh, man, long story. Let's see. I had a roommate. We'll name him Ben for now.
What's up, Ben?
And he was an ETH head, right? Let's call him that. He was a dev like myself, software engineer, and he was really, really interested in Ethereum. This was early 2015. I think his best friend is an early MakerDAO team member, and so he was preaching to the choir about ETH and Maker and DAI and so forth. As an engineer, you figure that onboarding into crypto is quite complicated, but Ethereum, one thing I think they did well is, they abstracted a lot of the blockchain specific things, and they had development tooling. And so as someone who was brand new to it, it just made sense for me to, essentially check it out. And it just made sense. It was like EVMs, and I've worked with lots of containers and virtual machines and so forth. And so it was all there. I think it took me 2 weeks to get a node running. And that was early days, and then it kind of made me a little sad.
What implementation?
I think it was Geth.
Okay.
I don't remember specifically.
And what year is this?
Early 2015.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't even think blockchain bloat was an issue, but it was just a little complicated at the time.
Yeah.
And then I went down the rabbit hole. Shout out to the rabbit hole. But I went down that rabbit hole and found Bitcoin and found all the altcoins, and took me 6 months, 7 months to realize that majority of it is crap, and Bitcoin's the real deal. But there was no Lightning, right? And so Bitcoin is still really, really low level, complicated protocol stuff. So it was a little hard to get into. And then late 2016, I read about Lightning, and I said, oh, this is interesting. It's still really early on. I remember spinning up a node in testnet, in the early 2017, mid 2017. And then it just progressed from then on. I think Lightning specifically opens a lot of doors for engineers into Bitcoin because, Bitcoin is pretty complicated. And
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So is there anything like in your previous life, pre-Bitcoin, which there should be like a BC equivalent for pre-Bitcoin, PB, like pre-Bitcoin life. Was there anything like beyond like engineering, anything philosophical or sort of economic philosophy that drove you towards Bitcoin?
Right. So I've always had this little itch in the back of my throat when it comes to libertarian ideology. Really just privacy, security, not necessarily anonymity to that level, but privacy, security, not being a product, if you will. And so it kind of clicked something after I read about it and read the white paper like everyone does, and realized that it's much bigger than just a couple of people doing some online development. It's really, really big. And then it just made sense. It clicked onto that nature, the philosophy that I had in the back of my mind. And I feel that because of my introduction to Bitcoin, I'm now much farther along into that thought of preserving your privacy, preserving your yourself against this wave of development that's happening on the Facebooks of the world.
Yeah. Do you think there's a great awakening happening? Do you think people are starting to realize the need for privacy? Because we talked about Matt Murad, Mamadov, and I on Rabbit Hole Recap a couple weeks ago talked about it. Murad and I sort of agreed there's like a bit of apathy out there. People don't give a fuck. Like there's been so many hacks. Equifax, Target, Facebook, you name it.
Yeah.
Your data,
all of them.
All kinds of data, all the data that is near and dear to your heart has probably been taken by hackers somewhere, but it seems like nobody cares. Do you think that's true, or do you think people are waking up?
I think it goes hand in hand with any world change, regardless if it's political or not. If it affects you directly, you will have very strong thoughts, and you will want to change it, or you want to modify it, whatever it is. If it does not affect you directly, chances are you're not going to give a crap.
Yeah.
So I think a couple people have been affected directly, and they're starting to pay attention to where the data is, and am I the product for this platform? But I think it's still really early on for us to say that there's a great awakening. I think it still needs another maybe 3 bull runs for people to realize that Facebook really is an evil e-corp. Right?
Yeah. No, it's it's crazy, like the avenues through which like Bitcoin can provide like individual sovereignty. Like we're talking about our data being used and sold by these corporations, these silos of data that we openly give our web traffic information to on a daily basis, myself included. But then it's also providing like financial sovereignty in like places like Venezuela. So it also provides data privacy as well at the blockchain, but the probably driving use case there is either to preserve their wealth or convert it to U.S. dollars in some way or fashion in a remittance play. So I don't know where I'm going with this, but I'm trying to say maybe people recognize the sort of financial sovereignty it provides before the privacy, and maybe the financial is a Trojan horse to figuring out that you can use this, like maybe like using a Lightning node to travel the web, like WebLN.
Right.
Like they're talking, and you can sort of hold your data there.
Correct.
People will come to it for sound money. Maybe I'm just fucking spitballing here.
Yeah, I think there's if you imagine a spectrum where privacy is in one side and user experience is in the other, it's very clear that the average Joe and Jane are on the very far end of that spectrum into user experience. It seems that users will give up any sort of rights and control of their data and so on if they can get that experience that they want. And because of that, I think that great awakening in relation to privacy will take a little longer until we can bring some of that user experience into the privacy sector. I think it's still very hard to be a private internet citizen. You need to have lots of tools. You need to have lots of experience. I feel like the future will require people to be really good internet citizens, and that will mean a lot of education into how that actually works and how to secure your data and be a good participant.
Yeah, right. We've talked about this a few times on this podcast. People are going to need to sort of go through a learning process similar to the way we did when we first got industrialized plumbing, and like people didn't know how to shower or wash their hands or wash their ass, and literally had to learn how to be clean. Luckily they did, because it helped increase life expectancy and overall health and cleanliness of the world. But it was a process. Like, people had to learn how to do that, and like, I guess the point I'm getting to, like, will the UX for Bitcoin and basically taking your wealth into your own hands, becoming your own bank, will it ever be as seamless as like opening the Bank of America app? And I think maybe not, especially if you're talking about handling private keys and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think key management is very, very important. It's a problem that I don't know that we have a solution yet.
Yeah.
But in general, I tend to think that if you give it enough time, the UX will help and it will get there. It's just a matter of, will Bitcoin become too big to the point, or it will become something else. It'll go in a different direction. State actors will affect it and shift its direction to the point where it's no longer something that developers like myself and others are trying to create experiences on top of. If it goes the way it's been going, I think, give it a couple more years and we'll be able to automatically whip up your phone, connect it to your home node, whatever that is. I read a tweet today. I think you retweeted it about
putting
PS3s
nodes in the PS3s and Xboxes. Yeah.
Every kid has one of those, right? You plug in a node in there, and as long as it's quote unquote self-manageable, it's not very hard to deal with. It's very low level. You just leave it and it just runs for you. That's genius.
Always plugged in, always on the internet.
Yeah.
No, it is genius, and I think actually this is a perfect segue into talking about Koala Studios and what you're talking about, the big topic in Marty's bent and on this podcast, Rabbit Hole Recap in particular, has been gaming as a killer use case, and that actually leads to another point, gaming using Lightning Network as sort of a bet and wager and microtransaction layer, and the potential to onboard people via the Lightning Network first instead of on-chain first is also enticing. I'm not fully abreast to the UX around that. So I guess what we can dive down here is let's dive back into catch up where we left off with Koala 4 months ago. What's been going on since October? Why you guys decided to launch now? How's it been for the last week? And then we'll jump into cosmic shit about how gaming can help Bitcoin adoption.
Yeah. So it actually all started at the residency. So Koala was a speaker. Jack Mallers was there too. We had people like Alex Bosworth from Lightning Labs. We had Christian Decker from Blockstream, amazing speakers, and some amazing residents as well. We had the Pierre was there. I was there. We had people from Bitlum and Zigzag, the decentralized exchanges. Just lots of good people. And we kept on coming back to the idea of business models. How do we create real business models now that we have the ability to make instantaneous microtransactions? You think that, oh, great, microtransactions. Sure, what's the use case, right? Show me a use case that provides you that magnitude increase in terms of user experience, or where's that improvement? And one of the things that kept coming back was gaming, and it was, there's two industries that always lead the pack. It's porn and it's gaming. And I think gaming specifically, it tends to be a younger audience. They're more native to the internet. They're more into the weeds and these kinds of things. And they already have the idea of money. A bunch of these games have. So WoW has gold and so forth. League of Legends. We have Fortnite and all of these kinds of games. And so it just kind of made sense for us to do a proof of concept of, can we create a business model that is stable, scalable, and so forth, using microtransactions inside of the Lightning Network in a game that's familiar, right? So Koala and I started talking. We both speak Portuguese, and so instantly it kind of just hit it off. We have similar backgrounds. We're both full stack engineers. He's slightly more on the back end side of things nowadays, and I'm more on the front end side of things. And so after leaving the residency, it was a great experience, learned a lot, and I think it was 4 days later, Koala reached out and said, "Hey, I'm all in this gaming situation. Let's build it." And from then on, I've been seeing his face every week.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah,
Just kidding.
No, Koala's great. And then from then on, we just started building. We worked out what the plan was, what the what game we're going to tackle, and we chose Lightning Chess. Really, chess was Jack was the one that positioned chess to us. He's a
good chess show.
I don't even know. He's a genius guy when it comes to chess. And we just went for it. We built it. We used a lot of like development. We used a lot of open source packages and so forth. So. But really, the goal with Koala Studio is twofold. One is, can we provide the proof of concept for that new business model based on microtransactions? And then two, it's really early days into this, so the expectation that you'll have that people will just join and you will make, you get revenue simply based on the volume of Lightning Network enthusiasts isn't really there. The real play is the infrastructure play, right? Similarly, how you have how do you provide the infrastructure so that users can come into Lightning and subsequently developers can build their games into Lightning? You have indie game developers who have a really hard time monetizing their games, and now there's a really quick entry, right? Soon enough, you'll have a Koala Studio SDK or LDK, which we're trying to come up with. It's Lightning Development Kit, and will it work? I guess we'll have to see, but that's an easy stream of revenue that they can easily pipe into, and they don't have to worry about securing the funds. They don't have to worry about any of that. And so, yeah, this is kind of where we're headed towards.
Is there any other than what you guys are doing and a couple other competitors like Satoshi Games? Like, is there any other like indie game developers that are into Bitcoin? Like, is there a crossover there? Do you think, or have you experienced? And
yeah, so. We had a couple people reach out to us in Telegram, a lot of Unity and C++ developers, game developers, and coming in with tons of feedback. One guy specifically, I don't actually remember his name. He just gave us 20 bullet points about why we're doing something wrong and how we can improve it. And feedback's great, but then we realized, he's an actual Unity game developer, so his games are very different than Lightning Chess.
What do you mean? What's a Unity game developer?
So Unity is like a graphics engine.
Okay.
So that's how you build, it's one of the ways you would build a real full-fledged game.
Like a Halo or something
like
like
a
that?
Halo or a Fortnite of sorts. We build chess in JavaScript, right? So it's, there's no physics engine for chess.
Yeah.
It's very different. So he's thinking really in the gaming industry, and we were really trying to make a proof of concept using games into Lightning Network. But we got a lot of people reaching out to us and asking how would they incorporate that into their games, and even people, is this open source? Can I help? I'm a game developer. So I think there's some that kind of correlation there that people seem interested. But it's like I said, it's early days. I think that if there's a standard and a de facto SDK that they can easily jump into, I think that would kickstart a revolution that people will jump into Lightning Network, especially because it's Bitcoin and the Bitcoin brand is so strong. Everyone knows Bitcoin. So if you can all of a sudden earn Bitcoin just by a couple lines of code into your already built game, it's a win-win situation.
Right, and then again, because I was actually tweeting about this like right before you got here with Jonathan Libov. Shout out Jonathan. Like gaming is going to be the Trojan horse to get Bitcoin in the hands of like kids. So imagine the opportunity to win V-Bucks or Satoshis. Like as soon as the kids realize that like Bitcoin has an upward valuation potential, unlike V-Bucks, like it's going to be a no-brainer for them. And like the collision of the gaming world, which is one of the fastest growing industries in the world, and Bitcoin just seems so natural and almost like it's destiny at this point, especially with Lightning enabling all this stuff.
Right. So to your point earlier, I think I have a nephew who's, oh man, I'm gonna get his age wrong. I don't know, really young, 4 or 5. I actually don't know. And
it's okay, it happens. I'm an uncle too.
He is. It's hard to explain. Born into the internet, there's no version of the world without it, and using a smartphone was second. It was just part of his being, right? He just knew how to swipe. He knew where to click. It was just natural. Now you're telling me that 5 years from now, newborns, 5 years later, won't be having this notion, won't have the notion that money just flows, right? It's what you're saying. Bitcoin, there's no barriers. So let's say you make some money somewhere on Bitcoin, or you have some money. It's no longer V-Bucks that's only used in that platform. You can get it out and you can use it somewhere else. You can eventually pay your coffee with it. You can buy some food. There's no barriers between these platforms. It's in the ether. That doesn't sound good. It's just around us, right? It'll just be this network that's around, similar to the internet.
Right, and it's fascinating because we're like screaming like how are people going to adopt it? How are people going to adopt it? But once like with game again, coming back to gaming, like thinking about, so let's talk about this. Like you were at BitDevs and gave a presentation on Monday night. You're talking about the feedback you've gotten. Like the number one request is being able to watch games live and bet on them. So like adding that aspect to gaming alone, which doesn't exist now, does it?
I mean, we have Twitch, but it's slightly different, right?
Yeah. Well, even with Twitch, you can send Lightning invoices in Twitch, okay? Or just hold up a QR code on your screen as well.
Right. Yeah, it definitely opens the capabilities of interactions. If you can if you can spectate a game, let's use Lightning Chess as an example. Let's assume Jack is playing against Marty, and we can add some sort of customization, personalization to the users. Then all of a sudden we have people from all over the world betting on the outcome of this game, or even betting on where Jack will move the next piece, right? You can go as granular as that, or as big as who's going to win this game.
That's for the degens. That's true degenerate prop bet shit.
And gaming is just growing at esports leading the pack, of course. We have these massive stadiums that are filled with people just watching other people play games. And so
blows my mind.
And it's going to be
Would you ever go to one of those?
I think I would to check it out. I don't.
You're not going to judge a book by its cover.
Yeah, I want to see it. I want to feel it. I feel like it's more of an experience rather than just watching a game. It's kind of, not to hate, but I'm not a huge baseball fan. But people go to baseball games to get drunk, right? They enjoy the company of people, and all of a sudden you're watching the game too. But it's really the experience that you're looking for.
Guilty.
So, bringing it back to gaming, it's, 2020, there are studies that say, year over year, it continues to grow at an exorbitant, percentages. And at 2020, they're saying it's going to be a $125 billion industry, growing at 14% year after year. 10 more years, what is that going to be like? 250, $500 billion? So that's becoming one of the biggest industries in the world. And, can we carve a little space for Lightning Network to intro to that industry?
Right. And I feel like it could be like throwing jet fuel on the fire, though, like with all the possibilities you get. So like we were talking last week about the ability in like these RPG games to, as a spectator, buy like zombies to send at the shooter or buy him lives or health or freeze him in midair for like
Right.
5 seconds. Like the interaction is just going to be like, I can see trolls hopping online and just fucking with players like out
Yeah.
of spite.
I think it's similar to how you have services that bring these you think these celebrities are untouchable, right? They have these lives and it's great, and then you get a little glimpse into their inner lives, even if they're faking it in some sort of Instagram or Facebook lives or Snapchats, and so. It's that interaction, that real interaction between the two people. So if you can see you're the best gamer in the world and he's playing this game, and you can actually interact with him through a microtransaction, you can say, "Hey, here's some lives. You keep going, man. We love you." Or "You suck. I'm gonna give you some. Whatever it is." And so there's all of these new game theoretical scenarios that you can create, and then the interaction makes it personal and people really get into it.
Right? I mean, you see like the beginnings of this with like YouTube Super Chat.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, I remember
like,
that. Yeah.
Like fans of particular YouTube channels just like literally paying YouTubers to read their comment. Fuck YouTube, you should implement Lightning Network. Cut all those fees out, It would be easier that way too. Like that's something you can implement it too. But it feels like, again, like we talk about podcasting and how it's like really early days for podcasting in general, and then YouTube's probably a little bit more established, but creating your own personality, your own brand, and being able to monetize that, it seems like people are starting to figure this out, and basically what you have to do is break down the barriers, and if you're able to set up a seamless onboarding UX for like the Lightning Network, which I think you guys have done actually. So we'll get to that in a couple seconds here. But I think it's just going to be like a no-brainer. So that's what we were talking about last night with Alex. Even like we were talking about retailers and how they're trying to compete with Amazon. Like it's going to get to a point when Lightning's fleshed out, if it does become as successful as we think it could become, and is working seamlessly, like it is going to be irresponsible as a business not to utilize it, especially at a payments layer.
Yeah, I have two points there. One is the Twitter, the Lightning Torch and all of that, and Jack getting in the middle of it. People were discussing, they're going to add Lightning to Twitter or Square Cash, and people are, and because he said it's a matter of when rather than if. So to that point, it's really early. So you still have routing issues, you still have capacity issues. When it's all fleshed out, 2 years down the line, and we don't have any of these bugs and issues in the Lightning Network, it's the same way that an investment advisor would tell the PM and say, hey, it's probably not a bad idea for you to invest 1% in Bitcoin, because it's an asymmetrical risk, and there's countless studies that if you just get some exposure to it, so it will be. It's what you're saying. It would be a bad move for an investment advisor or for game developers or application developers to not use Bitcoin and Lightning Network.
Yeah, it's getting to a point where it's riskier not to have a little skin in the game than it is too.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. Like I don't know. I think the Bitcoin hitting a decade old was a big mile marker. I think that's just psychologically like huge in people's minds.
Yeah, it's like breaking the 20K or the 10Ks or
right?
the 5Ks and prices and.
Well, in that same vein too, I'm like also a big believer. Like Bitcoin's biggest price hurdle is going from $0 to $1. Everything above that is like it's
smooth.
It's just waiting.
Right. Right.
So, yeah, it's crazy. I fucking love this shit. But yeah, let's talk about your onboarding process. So like hypothetically, especially with your voucher program, somebody could get onboarded to Lightning and Bitcoin via Koala Studios.
Absolutely.
So I'll describe my UX experience. So I got the email to get last Tuesday when you guys launched Lightning Chess, and I was literally set up with an account in 5 minutes. Like I wrote down my. So what you do is you hit create account and you get a key, basically similar to a Bitcoin private key, but this key gives you access to your Koala Studios account. You write it down. I wrote it down on pen and paper like a freak. Probably could have just copied and pasted it.
Right.
So that took me like 2 minutes. Should have taken me like 2 seconds. And then I hit next. there was a
And you're
voucher.
in.
There was a voucher code in the email, so I used that. Got 100 satoshis, and then I played Jack Mahlers in chess right away. Beat his ass,
Sure.
and then and then I won a little bit. So hypothetically, like if you get on with a voucher at 100 satoshis, you could maneuver your way to maybe 1,000 satoshis.
Yeah. So the onboarding was something that we paid a lot of attention to. So Koala and I come from a background in application development, and me primarily on the front end. So I'm very used to, how do we create a seamless, frictionless onboarding to this brand new and complicated system. And so we wanted to make it very easy. We wanted to make it seamless, and the easiest way is, very familiar to people, is this private key scenario. So what we do is, in the server, we create a key and we hash that key and we show that to you. So what you have is essentially a recovery key that allows you to recover your funds from your account. If you lose that, we actually can't help you. Your funds are stuck, and until you're able to prove it, and there's really no way to prove it. So really, you get these vouchers, you enter them into Koala Studio after onboarding, and right off the bat, you're able to play. But one thing that we wanted to do is make sure that we're not just limiting the Lightning Network enthusiasts to use the platform. We want to make sure that everyone could use it. So Lightning Chess is entirely free. You can actually go create an account. You don't need to fund it. You don't need satoshis. You can play chess against whoever and your friends and so forth. But if you want to use the premium features, that's where the monetization comes in, and that's when you need the satoshis. So it's pretty smooth. We've gotten a lot of feedback, and people seem to like it a lot.
Yeah, and then it's crazy how all these things are coming together too, because I eventually did end up topping up my account with some of my own satoshis, and I had my Casa node extension in the browser, and literally got said I want to send 10,000 satoshis, clip that in. I got an invoice request from you guys, hit my Casa extension, boom, 10
Done.
seconds, not even, probably less than 5 seconds,
Yeah, and if the infrastructure is there, technically there shouldn't be any routing issues. There shouldn't be any capacity issues. So you had a perfect experience because your node was already pre-connected to good channels. The assumption is down the line, everyone will always be really connected to all channels.
Yeah. I want to jump into the future of Koala Studios, but I also want to talk about Chancode's residency more.
We can talk about it all.
We got plenty of time. Let's go back to the residency and
Sure.
What the hell, so we've been talking pretty high level about how you're implementing Lightning, but what about Lightning specifically as what is it, a messaging layer? A messaging system? Is that what it would be defined as?
We have the gossip network.
Yeah, the gossip network.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking of. So as a gossip network, because there's a lot of Lightning FUD out there too, but as a solution, as a second layer solution, what excites you most about it, as a developer?
I think.
And was this taught to you at Chaincode's residency, or
Sure.
something new?
So a little bit of the residency. We were there for a full week with the mentors, and we had the full week to learn throughout the mornings and the days, and then in the afternoons we would build something. So I built a task board for questions, actually, which I'm aiming to open source because Koala Studio took all of my time, and I didn't get to finish it. But essentially, I think Lightning, I think it validates the ideas behind easy, instantaneous value transfer on the internet. I think it really, for the first time, we see a system that actually lives up to what it's meant to be. We think of Bitcoin that way, but there's all the criticisms for Bitcoin. It's slow, it's X transactions per second, and so forth. And I think Lightning actually puts all of the ifs and buts to question, and it lives up to that dream. Mm-hmm. So specifically on the protocol, I'm not a protocol developer, so I don't know that I would know all the specifics of it. But it's a gossip network. A large part of it is the gossip network that nodes talk to each other, and it's more or less fully automated. You still need to. We're still creating the abstractions on top of the nodes so that users actually don't need to manage channel funds and incoming capacity and so forth. But it's something that excites me is it's really those models. It's how can you use microtransactions. It's a brand new scenario that's never been available, and it's bringing the instantaneity of the information.
That was an impressive pronunciation of instantaneity.
Instantaneity, right? That's right. Yeah. So it just lives up to the dream, honestly. And ever since the very beginnings of it, when I spun up my testnet node, it just worked. And that was it clicked. And all of a sudden I said, okay, this is real. It works. I'm transacting, testnet Bitcoin with people in China and Japan and so forth. I remember when I received my first, random person paid my testnet invoice, and all of a sudden I said, oh, this is great. I don't even know where it came from, but I got paid. So it really excites me that it's real. Yeah.
Yeah. No, talking about like testnets, like people have been using the testnet to test the satellite API, and that dude from Eastern Europe who was just sending messages, like Grubels was like receiving them and dissect them. Like nobody knows where that dude's from. Could have been Adam Back at like Blockchain's headquarters making a story up, but
there's someone did a blog on the satellite, right? They started putting a bunch of
his daily journal.
Yeah, daily journals.
Yeah, and
then the torch from Samsung Mao. He said, oh, the next person needs to send me a torch through the satellite, and it's fascinating. I can't wait until it's fully fledged and everyone has nodes, and it's just going to be like the internet. Value and wealth will just be transferred instantaneously anywhere you want.
So what exactly needs to happen in regards to Lightning Network development to get it to a point where it is fully fleshed out? Is the roadmap sort of, again, fleshed out? Is there any unknowns that we sort of need to identify and fix, or is it like a 7-stage transition to proof of stake that he's doing, or is it a little bit more cut and dry?
So I think it's a little more complicated because it's a decentralized, network built on top of another decentralized network. So as much as there are bigger players that are trying to, work the protocols and make sure that we're following the best practices, we have companies like Blockstream, we have Lightning Labs, we have Async, we have, many others that are trying to drive that, that protocol development. I think it's really early days, and so for it to reach this stage that we're talking about, a lot of abstractions need to be introduced. It's what I was saying earlier. The average Joe doesn't want to know anything about this. He doesn't want to manage his channels. He doesn't want to know. He just wants to use it.
Yeah, I'm going to raise my hand here. Like, I suck at managing my channels.
Yeah.
Like, I fucked it up, set up a bunch of autopilot channels, and I got the torch and had to, like, fucking close down all my autopilot channels, like, send Bitcoin to my node, open other channels to get it working. And that's because I'm an ignorant rube. Like,
and then you think about it, right? If you could, you can't yet increase your channel capacities, right? There's this new availability called splicing, which will be introduced in 1.1, and splicing essentially allows you to increase or decrease your channel capacity one way or another without having to do a closing transaction. So if I have a channel with you for X number of satoshis and I want to increase that channel, I can't do that. We need to close the channel, so it means wait 10 minutes or whatever block time for Bitcoin to that transaction to go on chain, and then we need to create a new funding transaction to go on chain. So it's still really early, but once it's abstracted, Alex Bosworth is very vocal on Twitter about how to manage his channels, and he actually did a really good presentation on the Chainco residency about it. But it's a full-time job. It's still a full-time job.
You gotta like send satoshis between channels, like to show that you're a good.
You're a good node.
You're a good node.
Good routing node.
Yeah.
Yeah. He definitely explained to us that if you're trying to be a routing node, then it's a full-time job. You need to be a full-time routing node, and usually people would have 2 nodes because you definitely need incoming capacity, so you can use your second node to create incoming liquidity for you, and then once that liquidity is gone, you would create a new channel back to the other node, and it's a lot of work. And I think autopilot is getting there, but it's again early stages for it to say that it's anyone could do it.
Yeah, but how rapid is the development compared to like the protocol level of Bitcoin?
The development of the protocol? Compared to Bitcoin development.
Yeah.
So Bitcoin development is definitely to the outside world, it's much slower, and I think it should be. I think it has to. It should be something that's really hard to change. If it was easy to change, I don't think it would have lived 10 years, to this date.
I tend to agree.
Sorry?
I tend to agree.
Yeah. I think it's what people say. It's not a bug. It's a feature, right? It's that situation, and there's a lot of criticism on that. But I think if it can become, the word that everyone uses is ossified. If it can become ossified in the future, I think it would be great. And
that's what you want. I mean, if we're coming to it from an economic sound money perspective, if it is going to be a store of value, you want to know that it's not going to change. You want to have that certainty in your mind, like, hey, it's going to produce blocks roughly every 10 minutes in this fashion. Maybe in the future we'll use Schnorr signatures or something like that, but at a certain point in time, it's like, all right, this is it. This is all we need.
Yeah, I think the improvements need to be worth it, right?
Yeah.
And to be worth it, it needs to be worth to the greater population using Bitcoin, which just grows day after day. And so it's hard to, see, the block size discussion that's arising in Twitter now about decreasing it.
Oh my
That's
God.
a whole other thing that...
Put me out of my misery. I'm done.
We just finished the other fight against, big blockers. Now we want to go lower blockers, small blockers.
We're like crabs in a fucking bucket right now, dude. Nobody can fucking chill out. Everybody's bored as fuck. Like,
it's the world of Bitcoin. It's always fighting. But in terms of Lightning development, I think back to the point, it's really, can we create the abstractions to create the user experience that will drive the adoption? I think SDKs is one way. I think better Lightning wallets is another. I think better work in creating non-custodial, in a way to create non-custodial, so you're essentially you run your own nodes. If we can abstract the difficulties of it, so that, like we were saying, put it on a PS4, put it on an Xbox, and then your phone just connects to it automatically, right? There's definitely a future there where there's a company who will sell you Bitcoin/Lightning Network nodes that you just put, 1 or 2 nodes in your house, and your phone and all your devices automatically connect to it. And there's some little password exchange there, and all of a sudden your money is just available everywhere you want. So really, it's the same way Bitcoin is layer 1. We have Lightning layer 2. I don't know what other layers will exist, and if there'll even be layers, or if it's just applications or abstractions that will, top it off, so that the average person on the street will be able to use it.
yeah, and this is another thing I'm fascinated by, and I think you can definitely provide more color on, is like Ethereum. Like you said, you got into it because it was easy to develop on and sort of drew you as a developer. In that aspect, do you think Lightning provides the same sort of experience for developers and opens the opportunity for, like, I guess the question I'm trying to get at is, do you think Lightning maturing will provide a tipping point of developer interest that has previously not existed in Bitcoin per se?
Yeah, I want to say that it's almost better to a certain extent. I think if you have, we're grateful that we have great protocol developers building the great clients. So we have awesome people building LND. We have awesome people building C Lightning. And, specifically me, I'm more familiar with LND, and they provide all of the APIs that you would expect on a modern, application stack. Mm-hmm. So there's a RESTful API, and they're even using gRPCs, which essentially allows you to connect to any sort of, language, if you will. So they already abstracted a lot for us, and so as any application developer, modern application developer, writing any sort of React or Node or whatever can easily integrate with a Lightning node, because they're using the de facto standards for modern applications. Whereas Bitcoin is a little bit more lower level and requires you to connect to other nodes and so forth. So it was a little harder to get into Bitcoin. It's much easier for an application developer to get into Lightning and therefore into Bitcoin.
Yeah. Have you noticed any conversions recently?
So I don't know about conversions, but my friends definitely know I'm into Bitcoin and I'm into Lightning, and I have a large network of developers that I know, regardless of where they are in the world, and I've definitely seen an increase in, hey, Andre, how's it going? Can we chat a little bit about this Lightning thing or this Bitcoin thing? It seems interesting. I just read about this API, and it just works. It's great. So there's definitely a little bit of a wave that people are definitely seeing some change there, and I hope I think it's what we were saying earlier. You need to be good citizens to the platform. And so one of my goals is to, every time I talk to someone about it, is try and find out how to make that person turn, how to make them say, oh, it clicked, I get it. and just do your best to educate, right? Because it's still really new, it's still really early days, and so if you educate the next person, they will educate the next one and the next one and so forth.
What's your favorite pitch? Do you have multiple?
It depends on the person.
Mm-hmm.
I think if it's a really I actually have a funny one where he's a protocol dev and not in Bitcoin or Lightning, but really low level, Rust and C++. And I tried explaining to him the benefits and the pros and cons and of Lightning. And all of the questions that he asked were really deep protocol questions, and I didn't have answers for. And I was like, let me get you in touch with someone else. I don't really know. But the usual pitch is really the omnipresence of it. I think it's omnipresence, big words today. It's really the.
But how is it omnipresent? That's what I'm curious about.
Technically speaking, we've done Bitcoin transactions over radio, right?
Yeah, today ham radio wrote about it in the bed, dude.
So
Novak sent ham radio to Adam Curry. Shout out to the Godfather podcasting, Adam Curry from MTV News back in the day, and he's oh gosh, this is embarrassing. What is his podcast name? Oh, give me 1 second. I'm gonna think of it. 5. Come on, Marty. 4, 3. No Agenda Podcast.
There we go.
But he's been getting into Bitcoin, so he's like a podcasting OG. Like he's literally known for starting the first ever podcast and really sort of blowing up this space. And more recently, the last 6 months in particular, he's like been growing a liking to Bitcoin.
Awesome.
And he's also just so happens to be a ham radio enthusiast, apparently. So Novak, CEO, founder of Open Dime and the Cold Card Wallet up in Canada. Shout out Novak. Huge fan of what you're doing. Basically tested a ham radio wave transaction yesterday with Sam Patterson, I believe. I'm not sure where Sam is.
Yeah, I don't remember the names.
But somebody tagged Adam Curry, and it was like, hey, look at this. And then Adam Curry was like, I want to get a transaction. And fucking Boom. Godfather podcasting received a Bitcoin transaction via ham radio wave.
Which is, it's fascinating. It's really what I was saying. It's just everywhere. It's
so
omnipresent.
Like radio waves are omnipresent.
Radio waves, technically speaking, you can get any device and connect it to the internet, right? You don't see the internet, you don't think about it. It's just there. Mm-hmm. That's really one of the pitches is, first of all, you need to explain to them the hardness of Bitcoin, the sound money ideology behind it, the monetary policy. I know exactly how many Bitcoins are mined every day and when the next halving is coming, but the fact that it's extremely secure, backed by all this hash rate, backed by the microtransactions of Lightning Network, put 2 and 2 together, it seems to click to most people, most smart folks. And so it's just everywhere, and it'll be more reliable and better and more secure and more present day after day. And so there's really no future where I see Bitcoin having hard time in terms of adoption if we continue on this trend of more development, more abstractions, more user-friendly interfaces. It's just how the internet worked, and it's how Bitcoin's going to work.
All right, I'm 2 beers in. I'm a 2.
I need to catch up.
I'm a 2 beer lightweight. Let's get cosmic with it. Like, so beyond gaming, like, how do you think Bitcoin, if it's omnipresent like that, how does it change the world? Are you an optimist or a pessimist?
I tend to be too optimistic sometimes.
Why is that?
Ever since I was 10, I think I was, computers. And when I think back to it, it was a very different, time of computers and internet. We had dial-ups and so forth. And that was, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. So, 20 years ago, we didn't have Facebook. We barely had Google, I think. And, the technology advancements, the speed of technology advancement is just so large and so fast that it's what I was saying. I don't really see a scenario where the many people working on Bitcoin around the world don't make it work around whatever limitations, regulations, whatever it is that try and stop it, right?
Yeah, and then to me, it's like, it just makes sense, right? Like,
it just makes sense, man.
Like, right? It's just like, if we're going to transition into the information age, an age built on the internet, like the internet should have a native currency.
Absolutely. And it's we don't know how much money the Fed prints, but it's okay. We'll continue living our lives and accept that people just print money and make, and it's the first time that I think it clicks. And I gave the Bitcoin standard to my parents.
Boss.
And I also gave them an open dime.
Boss.
Yeah, it was great. And they loved listening to me blabber about Bitcoin and Lightning for two full hours, I think. And then at the end, they said, okay, we get it. How do we buy Satoshis? And I was like, check mark.
How do we buy Satoshis? They're already
Satoshis.
denominating them in Satoshis.
Satoshis.
Let's go.
Same
out to your
thing.
parents.
When we launched Koala Studio, my mom was, I need to get more Satoshis. It's coming. They're getting it.
You're teaching your parents to use it. Are they using it? Have they played?
They've played. I don't know that they've used it to the extent of using it. They definitely played Lightning Chess, right? But it still needs a little bit of an education onboarding. I think I did that part. My dad has a Trezor and he knows how to use it.
Boss.
But apart from that, it's still early, and we need to continue on the educational side of it.
I feel like a bad son. Mom and Dad, I'm going to get you an open dime soon. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's about time.
Yeah, the more I was speaking to
my dad. Shout out. Actually, sorry. I'm gonna shout out my dad. He said he downloaded the Cash App's been buying Bitcoin every day, a little bit.
Hey, shout out Cash App. They're great.
Shout out Cash App. Jack, coming for that ass in a couple weeks. Hope you're ready.
Oh yeah, congrats on that, by the way.
Thanks, dude.
Yeah, should be a fun one.
Yeah, I hope I don't puke on myself.
No, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
You've done bigger interviews.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I interviewed Lightning Koala a few months ago.
Yeah, who is that? I don't know who that is. Is he
Dude.
a big deal? He's a big deal.
Pretty big deal.
Yeah, he made that Satoshi's Place thing. I don't know. Yeah.
PBD, Satoshi's Place, my favorite internet graffiti site in the world.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, someone did the whole painting of it again. Like they, how you can actually get the whole board.
No, well, he gave. I don't know how to use the super user interact with the command line.
Right.
I'm too dumb.
Yeah, it was right away. They launched, and I think 1 week later, someone reverse engineered the API and created a tool that would just instantly put a bunch of Satoshis together. And I know the chain code people were the first one to put the FBI notice on it.
Boss.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. And at the time, I think it cost like $70 to do it because of the price of Bitcoin.
It's actually the cheapest advertisement for Tales from the Crypt. I
Really?
haven't done it in the last couple of weeks, but for like a month there, I was going on Satoshi Place every day and like cleaning up a Tales from the Crypt billboard.
It's
very
great.
cheap. It was like 50 cents for a billboard.
And you're getting the right audience.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Hey, you Satoshi's Place freaks, I love you. Shout out to all of you. Ah, man. Let's get heady here. We were talking earlier. You lived all around the world, man.
I have. Well, I've been to a lot more countries than I've lived. But yeah.
So don't mind me doxing you. We can cut this out if you're not fine with it. But your dad was in the oil industry guy?
He was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we moved early on from Brazil, where I'm from, to the UAE. So I lived in Abu Dhabi for a while. It was an interesting experience.
What was it like being a Brazilian in Abu Dhabi?
It was great.
Yeah?
People definitely loved that you come from the land down under. They're just like, hey, where are you from? South America? Oh, Brazil? Because I don't know why. There's this notion of Brazil being the
Fun.
Yes.
What is it? America's life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and Brazil's the pursuit of happiness, liberty, and life.
Right. I mean, maybe not now with the new president, but we can talk about that later. And so it's
Hey, we will. I want to talk about what the hell's going on there. We'll figure it out later.
okay. Yeah. Let me go into the UAE side. So it was great living there. I think it was one of the best decisions I didn't make in my life. I wasn't at a position to say no. My whole family moved, and I didn't speak any English till then, and it definitely changed my life. I ended up moving to New York after that, where had I been in Brazil, moving to New York would not have been an option, right? And so a little surreal, a little bit of too good and too big, and they need the biggest mall. They have the biggest, building. They have the biggest.
Yeah, what's life there? It feels like they like to flex a lot.
It's a very
excuse me, like
sure.
Abu Dhabi likes to flex a lot.
It's a very westernized society as much as it's still, Muslim and Arabic, but they're very open to foreigners. While we were there, I don't know if the stats are the same, but while we were there for that period of time, I believe 83% of the people in the country were expats. And
Really?
Yeah, it was
83?
It was an absurd number.
Interesting.
Really, the what we call them locals, right? The local Emiratis were few, very very few. I actually have only 3 friends who are from there. Everyone else was either they're Lebanese or they're Syrian or they're Moroccan. They're nearby, and then everyone else was Hong Kong or China or American and European. And but really the ones Emirati friends are 3, maybe 3.
Damn. So they're not interested in building walls there in Saudi Arabia. It sounds like.
I mean, it's really. I think they did something really right where it's geographically speaking, it's in a very favorable location, right? It's right next. It's essentially the Singapore of the Middle East, right? Singapore is that little Asian hub.
I need to travel more, man. I'm fucking.
Yeah, Singapore is that little Asian hub that everyone connects to, and it's super safe, really secure. Everything works well. It's super efficient. And I think Abu Dhabi and Dubai, essentially the UAE, were trying to be that face. You can go there. It's extremely safe. You're not going to face any issues. They're very friendly to the outside world, whereas Saudi Arabia might be more closed off. And so I think they're trying to be that player in the Middle Eastern space. And it was living there definitely gave me the ability, and my family in general gave me the ability to travel around there. So I've been to lots and lots of countries, and definitely opened my eyes to how the world works.
I'm jealous.
Yeah, I would be too.
What thanks for flexing. Strong flex. No, what was the most eye-opening experience of traveling that much for you?
So we did have you heard of Habitat for Humanity?
Yeah, actually in high school we had to do a lot of community. We were forced to do, not forced. I mean, yes, we were forced to do community service, but I liked it. A lot of my community service hours were Habitat. Nice.
Yeah, we got the opportunity through our school to go to specific places to essentially help. So I actually went to the southern parts of India, where you see the level of poverty and access to basic needs is absurd, right? We were staying in a rather fancy hotel, and if you walk half a block, you would see someone essentially shitting on the floor. Mm-hmm. And it definitely opens your eyes where...
You're talking about India or San Francisco?
Those are bird scooters, man. Bird scooters. It's really close to shit, but it's bird scooters.
I'm sorry, that was inconsiderate of me. I'm sorry. Just tell my SF friends.
No, it definitely opens your eyes to people actually don't really have, the large majority of the world don't have access to the basic aspects of life, water, sanitation, and so forth. And living in such a contrast, which was the UAE, where they have the biggest malls and the biggest buildings and the biggest, it definitely opens your eyes. And I was rather young then; it was high school time, so it definitely opened my eyes to the world is not the bubble we live in. It's much much bigger.
It's an interesting juxtaposition, hopping from UAE to southern India.
And even more, sorry to cut you, but even more, I was a really young boy in Brazil, where you go to the beach and everyone's in bikinis, and I moved to the UAE where I go to the mall and everyone's wearing kanduras and burqas, right? Mm-hmm. And it's cultural shock, man. Cultural shock.
Yeah. I think it's important though. Again, I keep harping back to last night's episode that I recorded, but that's we talked about how I moved from Philly to South Carolina, back to Philly to Chicago, now to New York, and even in this country alone, there's so many people in different situations with different mindsets, and it's you need to travel to open your mind to this stuff, and I do want to travel a lot more. Japan's on my list to get to next.
Going to Japan later this year, planning it, and trying to do 2 weeks, trying to hit Tokyo, Osaka, and Kyoto at least.
Boss.
Yeah, I'm really, really into sushi, omakase, and things like that, and so
I worked at an izakaya in
Oh,
college.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, have yet to go there, but it sounds pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, an izakaya in Chicago, but
Oh, okay.
yeah, like
Do they have one in New York? I don't know if they have one.
they do. There's an izakaya Mew on shout out free ad on 35th between 5th and 6th Ave, I believe, or between Madison and 5th.
Awesome.
Very good. If you're looking for some ramen.
Yeah, I need to check it out.
Yeah. My brother was just in Japan too. He went skiing out there. I was talking to him yesterday about it. He said it was fucking dope.
Yeah, and it's just so much bigger. We started doing research on, where to go and how to get around, and it's much, much, much bigger than you think it is. And too many islands, to be honest.
Really?
Well, if you look in the map, and it's much bigger than I personally imagined it before. I didn't get to, while in the UAE, I didn't get to go that far east. The farthest I went was, actually, I don't know how far I went east, but I didn't get to go to Japan. My sister went to China, and I'm not sure she went to Japan, but it's definitely a place that I think, I would like to see myself living there in the future, possibly.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know that the future is United States.
Why is that?
I mean, I would like to believe the peak of the United States was after World War II.
Future is female, Andre. You think U.S. is post-peak?
In the grand scheme of history, I would say so, yes. And the way the world is moving, I tend to think that the Eastern world has been moving at a faster pace of adoption, specifically of new technologies. Seoul, and Taiwan, and Hong Kong, and people use crypto, and that's really, really bleeding edge.
It's legal tender in Japan, right?
I'm sorry?
It's legal tender in Japan, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And of course, it's really early days in crypto and Bitcoin specifically, but they are already at the forefront of it all, right? So what is it going to look like in 10 years where, in China you have WeChat, where they do everything in WeChat. You pay bills, you talk to people, you buy everything in WeChat. Let's say the WeChat version of something in like the Eastern world, in Japan and so forth. What does that look like if there's, if they use Bitcoin? And is it going to take 10 years to get around to being adopted by everyone? I don't think so. It's much quicker than it is here.
Well, China certainly won't be adopting that, I don't think. So let's get into this. Let's get into like privacy
China.
And like dystopian futures and
Sure.
the fight against the surveillance state. Like, do you think? So that's what I would say. I'm more bullish on the U.S. just because I think the United States as an idea, America as an idea, the American dream as an idea, not necessarily the government that we live under and the system that we live under, but the idea of fucking go out there and make something of yourself still exists and is pretty strong today. And the idea of freedom and liberty, I believe it's still deep down there, even though it's slipping away.
Yeah, I tend to agree.
I don't know. I think we have an opportunity. I think people are starting to see what's going on in China with the social credit thing in particular.
Oh, man.
And I know people I talk to, like my parents, my wife, this is fucked. I don't want this. And I think there may be sort of a pivot here in America where people are like, all right, let's not have this. Actually, I can't say that for a fact. I'm probably in a bubble. A lot of people are pushing socialism right now and stuff like that. So that was just a ramble. I don't know where I went.
Yeah, I don't know that I definitely don't see the United States taking the same stance as China. The extremely different, societies in every way, shape, or form. Xi Jinping just essentially is now ruler, right? Let's call it that. And there's no terms anymore, so he rules. They can make any calls, and I agree. I tend to agree that the freedom, the ideologies of freedom and American dream are still rooted in the United States and in America and specifically. But with the way the world is going, I tend to think there's more opportunities out east, and I think the Brexit issues on Europe, I think the populist movements that have been happening all over the world, I think these are all factors that have been, slowly tinkering and there will be a breaking point. Will it be another economic crash? Will it be another, I don't know, whatever. There's too many disasters that can happen, and I don't know that the United States in 10, 15, 20 years will be the same United States that it was 20 years ago, that it is today, and maybe it's a more opportune time to be elsewhere, for whether it's personal growth, whether it's, if we want to go into the Bitcoin development side, whether it's just, better lifestyles. I think there's definitely some, having lived outside, it's definitely something that I would like to do again.
No, and as somebody who hasn't traveled that far outside, I'm going to take your advice to heart. Before we get forward, I got to pause and check the sound because I just noticed my mic was unplugged. I hope it was only for like 10 seconds. I'm hoping it was. We'll see, though. We'll be right back, freaks. All right, we're back, freaks. Luckily, I did not fuck up. The sound's good.
Safe and sound.
Andre, we're back.
Beautiful.
Little detour there. Sorry about that. It's poor form. That's what you get here at Tales from the Crypt, though. It's Tales from the Crypt difference.
It's all the beers. I blame the beers.
Yeah, you need another one, by the way.
I do need another one.
While I open you another one, we were just chit-chatting about what we're going to jump into next. I think let's stay on the surveillance state. So we're heavily surveilled right now, even in the freest countries in the world. How do you think this change? What do you think the main problem is, and how do you see it changing? Or if it doesn't change, how do you see it getting worse?
So it started, I think it started because of my interest in Bitcoin and so forth, and it just kind of bled into that libertarian ideology, and keeping your data private, making sure that this whole notion of, if you don't have anything to hide, you don't have to hide anything. If you don't have anything, essentially, it's basically saying if you don't have anything to say, then there's no need for free speech, right? That's
so
not,
bullshit.
Yeah, it's not how that works, right? The products should not need to use your data in order for you to use them. And I think people fail to see that each and every device and product and platform created is to use people as a means to an end. It's to make money by selling to advertisements and so forth. So we got a Amazon Echo as a gift, and I threw it out right away. My girlfriend was, what about this? And I said, nope, I'm not getting that in my house. I already have a Samsung TV that could easily be bugged, and we'll never know. I have, 3 computers. The chances that those can be hacked and easily, so I'm very, very conscious. I don't use the phone 2FA approach, the SMS approach for everything that I can. I have YubiKeys for everything.
Really?
Yeah. Again, it's not as user-friendly. You need to be slightly more technical to use it, but I definitely know that if I'm logging into an account, it's 110% me. It's no one else.
That peace of mind worth it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Whether it's my computer, my emails, anything that I'm able to, I use my YubiKey for all of it. And so please don't steal my YubiKey. That's why you have backups, right? So, the surveillance state, I think it's interesting because people fail to see that it's everywhere and everything is geared towards it. So any new product like the Amazon Echoes of the world, people love it because, hey, Alexa, do this and this. But people fail to realize that if it's able to realize that you're saying the word Alexa, then it needs to be listening to you at all times.
Yeah.
Right? And then it's your word and his word. It's like she says, he says. So Amazon can say that they don't record it, but then just a couple months ago there was the court case where they had to release the recordings of it.
The murder, right?
And the murder, and right away it's available, right? So someone is storing those, and now let's say that let's even say that they're securely storing those and it's safe. How safe is it? What about hackers who can, come in and steal that data, and all of a sudden there's recordings of you saying XYZ thing, and you're a politician, or you're a CEO of some company, or you're running for some other thing. And
you're the hottest podcast host of the Bitcoin podcast.
Exactly.
Or something like that,
There's so much that could happen.
No, and so the Amazon or the Echo, the Amazon Echo or the Alexa, are they the same?
Alexa's
Google's the Echo?
No. Amazon Echo is the little pod thing.
Okay,
and
Alexa's
the woman.
Alexa lives in the Echo.
Right.
But beyond that, did you see the story about Nest? The cameras and the fucking hacker got into some people's Nest account, was talking to their baby and put the heat in the baby's room up to 90 degrees. The Internet of shit is a real thing, people.
Right. And there was the case where, I don't even know if it's a case yet, but essentially Amazon is trying to do the Amazon lock. Have you heard of that?
I have.
Essentially,
where they let like
there's a little camera
yeah.
in front, and you can essentially register people based on their faces. So if Marty comes in and sees my little Amazon lock sees you, it'll unlock automatically. Sure, maybe the facial recognition is up to par. Let's assume that, but it's also used for FBI because they can essentially get that data and say, if the camera has seen such person and it matches the facial recognition, I can place that person at that time of the day. And so imagine a suburban neighborhood where all of the locks are Amazon locks. All of a sudden, every street front is being recorded at all times. And people fail to really recognize that, right now, right here, where we're standing, there could be recordings. And we have no idea. Oh, there's a camera right here.
There's a camera looking at us.
Hello.
What's up?
Where's that going? Sure, that's a CCTV, and maybe no one's looking at it, but we said a couple of things here that I don't know that it couldn't be used against you in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you never know what's going to happen.
You claimed you were the hottest podcast host in the Bitcoin space in this episode. We found that not to be true. No, yeah, can be used against you. And it's like, it's weird how some movies like perfectly describe this. Like Minority Report, like we're getting close to a Minority Report world where like people are trying to predict crime, and then like Black Mirror perfectly predicting China's social credit thing.
Right.
Like, these dystopian futures have been played out in like novella and movies throughout time. Like we just like seem to be barreling towards it. Like, are you hopeful that we'll avoid it, or do you think?
I'm hopeful that there will be big players in the space that will help turn the wheel around or slow it down, but it doesn't seem to be happening as fast as I would expect. And it's what I was saying earlier about Bitcoin too, is you need to teach people. You need to teach. So my family, we've moved to Signal, right? We don't use WhatsApp anymore. And then especially people can say that WhatsApp is end-to-end encrypted. I need proofs. I don't see them, right?
Don't trust Zuck.
Yeah, I definitely don't trust Zuck and his, chairman power of all over Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. And now they want to merge all the infrastructure, but hey, no, we're not going to gather all the data involved and sell you things. So, the more you can do to be private, I don't use Gmail anymore, only for work, right? So
I'm still stuck in my Gmail ways.
User experience, right? I will say that. I will say moving away from Gmail, my email experience is not as nice. I don't have a great calendar right away. I don't have all of these integrations right away. As an engineer and as a developer, it's perfectly fine. My, cousins who are not probably would, people say, oh, do you have a Gmail, as if Gmail is email. And then when I say I don't have a Gmail, it's like, who
Can I even talk to you?
Yeah. How do you receive emails? And I say, well, email is it's a protocol almost. It's not Gmail. So it's definitely something I keep in mind, and I try my best to teach people without annoying them, because it's also a topic that a lot of people just don't care and don't want to listen to.
Yeah, being that Bitcoin friend's a burden. I wouldn't recommend it to you freaks. It's been a long 6 years, 7 years almost.
You've been that early?
I mean, I forget when I first bought exactly. It wasn't when I first found it, but like I found it and started shilling it right away. I was like, yo, this stuff's dope. Like,
yeah. I mean, I used to think my friend was an odd one out when he started talking about it, and now look at me, So
yeah. No, but going back to like people getting stuck on Gmail, like I think for me personally, the reason why I'm still on Gmail, fucking doxing myself always, is just mental switching costs. Like, so maybe that's something we talk about. I mean, this is applicable to both like securing your email and then fucking switching your email providers and then switching your currencies. Like the mental switching cost of doing something like changing your email, and then I would argue, increased mental cost of switching your fucking money. Like, how do we overcome that? So
I think email is really interesting because it's almost like your identity online nowadays. So switching your email is not something that you do one day to the next. It's you need to forward all the emails. You need to let your friends and family know that this new email that they might be receiving from this new address is really you. There's all the reputations because it's a brand new email, so it might go to spam. There's all of these things. And so I don't it's really mental, and it's also it ties in. It's user experience. It's really mental burden because you now have to. You don't have an app. You need to go into a website, and it might not be as friendly. It's not as pretty, and it's not as useful. And I have a hard time with lazy people who see the problem and don't want to act on it.
You call me lazy, Andre?
A little bit, but it's okay. But most people are lazy.
Right.
My thing is, I'm really big on efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
I think most of my close peers will tell you that. And so if I can achieve the same level of efficiency in terms of in terms of email, getting communication across from two people, it doesn't matter to me if it's Gmail or something extremely more secure, and something that won't sell my data to some other providers. So it just makes sense to me, and I think if you see the issue and you don't do anything about it, how are you a good citizen? How can you justify it?
Yeah, it's like be the change you want to see in the world, right?
And don't get me wrong, you don't need to go above and beyond. You don't need to be the guy or
to go
the person.
Jameson Lop on everybody.
Exactly. You don't need to be the liberator, but do a little bit. Teach someone, talk to someone, learn some more, and then step by step. There's 8 billion people in the world, and there will be in the next couple of years, and so it's one by one. We need to. It's like the marginal cost of onboarding someone else. Like, how do we decrease that marginal cost so that it's easy for people who just got onboarded to onboard others?
Right.
Right.
No, I think this bear market's actually producing like a lot of quality information and quality evangelist, if you will. I don't want to get too like religious. It's not even a religious term per se, but like there's a lot of people shilling right now. There's a lot of Bitcoin podcasts. There's a lot of newsletters. There's a lot of developers sharing what they're building. And again, going back to like tipping points, like where's the mind share tipping point where it sort of hits a contagion? And that's another part about this bear market too, is a lot of people have been working on refining the narrative and trying not to feed people false hope. Like we probably fucked it up the first half of the first decade of Bitcoin, pitching Bitcoin at the protocol level is fast, easy, and cheap.
Right.
So it's trying to recalibrate and reset the message. And it's like you're trying to reset the message as a amoebus fucking decentralized quote-unquote community or Bitcoin users.
Yeah, I don't personally love the idea that just because we're in a bear market, we build more. I think it's just there's less noise, right? It's the reason why we say bear market or bull market is based on the price. I'm not really interested in, of course the price will drive adoption and it will drive all the other things, but it's the monetary policy, the technological advancements, all of the things put together that drive me and my my interest to it. It's not really whether it's 5, 10, or 20K. It's can we provide better solutions and build better products and build better user experiences that take society to the next level where wealth is shared.
Yeah. But you have to admit, during some of these face-ripping bull runs, it's hard to concentrate on work.
Absolutely.
It's like, what the fuck is going on?
It's all time like, oh, refresh. 50% up in one day. How is that possible? Yeah.
I feel like these days, I swear to God, Scout's Honor, I have my Scout's Honor pose up right now. Like, I only check the price when we do Rabbit Hole Recap. Like, I haven't even been, like, once a week. Like,
That's very healthy.
Yeah.
There was, during the last peak, there was, I checked a lot.
Oh, yeah, so did I. It was impossible not to. You had, like, $1,000 daily candles. Like, how could you not, like, hawk it?
And it wasn't just Bitcoin. I think if it was just Bitcoin, I think we would check less. But there were
thousands.
Everything was going up vertically, parabolically. So, and every day I would hear someone tell me something new about some other thing and then exploded next week.
Wand chain, bro.
Oh
Wand chain's
God.
taking over, man.
Oh my God.
It's not IOTA anymore. It's Wand chain.
What IOTA is the one that rolled their own crypto, right?
They rolled their own crypto.
Yeah, what's the first rule of crypto? Don't roll your own crypto.
They had the douchiest like head dev team in the world. Like that was just like a huge douche.
And then I remember people gave feedback on it and found the bugs, and they said, "Fuck you,
fuck you, you're wrong. We're awesome." It's not true, bro. Yo, dude,
are they still top 10? They're top 10, right?
I don't know.
I don't
know,
care.
but I heard Nano's coming for the throne.
Wasn't that called something else before? Blocks?
R chain or something like that.
R
R
chain?
blocks. R blocks.
R blocks?
Maybe
Ray
R
blocks.
Ray blocks. There we go.
Ray blocks.
That's teamwork makes the dream work. We figured that one out together. A little spitball in there.
What a name.
Yeah.
Ray blocks.
Ray blocks.
I don't even know.
Yeah, where are we going? Let's pivot back to lightning games.
Yeah.
We should wrap it up here probably in the next. We're only like an hour and 15 minutes, and we got some time. What? So I guess this is great. Like, because you presented this on Monday at BitDevs. Like, what have you guys learned? Like.
Yeah. So I can actually give you some numbers. I actually shared those in BitDevs. It was so Lightning Network now we're roughly at 6,000 nodes. I think that's a very good metric to have. We as a Lightning chess, platform.
Sorry to interject, but like 6,000 nodes, like if you're comparing all cryptocurrencies and not just like second layers, I think like that's third, right?
Third,
it's
yeah.
Like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and then Lightning.
I think Ethereum is 7,000 or 8,000.
Yeah.
Bitcoin has many, many, many more. There are just listening nodes, actual, routing. Not routing nodes, like full nodes that actually route. Messages are, I think, up in the 10,000s. Mm-hmm. But I believe there's 50, 60,000 nodes.
Non-listening nodes.
Yeah. And so just the fact that it's 2 years old and there's 6,000 nodes, it's absurd. And it's a good metric to have because you think that Lightning Network, that's one field, and then chess, that's a whole other field, and specifically online chess, right? It's a very small niche market. And yet we were able to get upwards of 1,500 accounts in Koala Studio, which, if you use the 6,000 nodes as a base metric, it's really, really bullish, right? It's people actually took the time, created their accounts.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they seem interested, right? So whether it's the convergence of the two industries, chess, online gaming, and Lightning, or if it's just all the Lightning people who are really enthusiastic about it, we had upwards of close to 500 accounts funded, so people are actually using the funding mechanism. We had someone play Lightning chess for Shirred Bits, Chris at Shirred Bits. Yeah, Chris Stewart.
Yeah.
He was at the residency as well. He played Lightning chess for their for Shirred Bits happy hour, which is awesome.
I saw Justin Moon was playing with it too.
Yeah, Justin Moon and Koala were in London and Advancing Bitcoin, where we had like 10 people playing against each other. So in terms of numbers, it's actually quite, it was actually a really good launch.
And it's funny seeing your Telegram group, people are just like randomly throughout the day, like, here's a link, who wants to play me?
Yeah, I had to mute it, because it's really distracting to see, hundreds of messages like, hey, who wants to play? Hey, I'm in, let's play. Good game, good GG,
Mm-hmm.
And it's really awesome to see people excited about it. But one thing people ask a lot is what's next, right? Chess is great, but what's coming next? So far, the feedback has been really positive. A couple of things that we need to change in the UI and the process of how betting works and be clearer for the user. But I think so far it's been a very successful launch, and people were putting, someone deposited $100 in Sats, and I said, why, first of all, and who are you going to bet $100 with? But hey, be my guest. The Lightning Network supports it. You may do whatever you want.
Reckless. That sounds reckless.
Yes. You want to hear a reckless?
Yeah.
I put 0.2 in my Casa node, and then it broke.
Because it was over the limit?
No, the node.
So it just died?
Just died.
But you have a backup, right?
Yes, but channels, and so the way LN works is, technically speaking, my peers on these channels could technically, after a given amount of time, force close on me because my node's offline, and we don't have watchtowers yet, which essentially would forbid that from happening. And so it's
essentially burned, or does the
not
other side
yet.
of the channel get it?
No, yeah, I'm reaching out to the Casa people. They're helping me out next week, but it's been a little while. I'm not very, very hopeful for it, and I think it's a learning. It's like, hey, don't do that yet.
Well, thank you for your contribution to making Bitcoin a little bit more deflationary.
I know, and every Bitcoin helps, and so now we have people talk about 17 million these days. So it's, what is it, 16 now? I feel like with the Quadriga,
Quadriga.
Yeah,
it's $190 million worth of quote unquote crypto. I'm not sure exactly how much Bitcoin they have.
I heard it was hundreds of actual Bitcoins. So,
Thanks.
200 of them, 600K, and now it's 16 million and some change. It's more scarce than people realize.
Rest in peace to the Quadriga CX founder, if he's actually dead. Actually, I'm not going to speculate on that. But what was I going to get back to? This is what I wanted to get to. The features of Lightning Chess. Let's talk about them in particular. We have not talked about them we talked about hypothetical things in the future, but let's talk about exactly what you can do on Lightning Chess.
Sure. So
many variables to take into consideration.
Yeah. So what we wanted to do was create incentive structures so that the game was an experience for everyone involved. So for us as game developers, we take a little percentage of the premium features. That's the revenue model. The players themselves, there's two ways of using it. So one is when you're playing a game, you can actually wage money, and so you can wage bets. And at the end of it, the pot goes to the winner. So that's one flow. The other flow is we created the ability for users to extend timers and undo moves. And these are essentially proposals that a user would do to the other user, would propose to the other user. It's like, hey, here's 100 Satoshis. I need 100 seconds more. And then it creates this cool theory, this gaming theory where you can essentially refuse to accept it, and in the chat say, hey, I need 1 Bitcoin, and then you can say, oh, I don't have one, and then they say, well, then you're going to lose the pot. So it's actually interesting. In the Telegram group, people talk about it. It's like, hey, why didn't you accept my extension of time? And it said, well, I didn't feel like the money was enough, and I didn't have to. So it's creating this cool environment where people are incentivized to do certain plays and create certain, I heard people using 10,000 Satoshis to extend a time for 10 seconds, which is, it's crazy, but it's where the opponent will accept it, and therefore the game will continue.
What if this changes the game of chess? Like, does this exist in like the norm? Like, you can't control a chess game like this.
I don't think so. Yeah.
So what if like new chess strategies come out of this? Like,
I think this coupled with spectating would be massive. I think if we can see Marty playing against...
I'm going to kick Jack Mahler's ass again.
Yeah, and we can bet on the outcome. We can bet on the moves. The same way nowadays in the UK you can bet on who's going to score the next goal in the football match. That's super, super specific, but your odds are insane, right? I definitely believe there's a scenario where we will create that. And spectating on Lightning Chess wouldn't be too hard to implement, so we're actually trying to fit that in.
Okay, that's a good segue into the next point. Like, so what is on the roadmap here? Like, you're obviously taking feedback and recalibrating from there. Like, are you going to add more games, refine Lightning Chess in particular, go out into the world and try to have them implement what you guys have built at an infrastructure level? I don't know.
Right. So there was a lot of interest in the SDK aspect of it. I think that's really the business model driver there is to create infrastructure for game developers to onboard into Lightning. And we've been talking about this the whole talk is abstractions. Can we abstract the Lightning Network to make it super easy for someone to create revenue stream from it? I think that's the big pillar we're trying to tackle next. We definitely have received a lot of feedback on the Lightning Chess specifically, and we want to introduce the ability to spectate on games. We want to flesh out a little bit more of the mobile interface. There's a couple bugs here and there. One piece that is interesting that people asked a lot is in terms of identity, because the onboarding flow is so seamless. Technically speaking, you're just another user. There's nothing identifying you.
You have no idea you're playing. Like, when I say I beat Jack Mahler's ass, like I just assume I was playing him. I have no idea.
Right.
And I actually won on a technicality because he ran out of time. So you probably would have beat me if it was based on checkmate.
Right, and so that's something that we're trying to do. We have an implementation where Lightning Jewel, it's able to sign a message. So you can sign the message that essentially signs you in
with
to
your
Koala Studio.
node alias.
Right, and so we want to add aliases. We want to add optional recovery processes through email and passwords if people want to do that. But one that's really interesting is, can we use your node as your identity?
Yeah. Side note, Bitcoin will have made it when Lightning Jewel is the first jewel that comes to mind in people's minds.
Yeah.
Not that nicotine stick that the kids are smoking these days. Once it's the Lightning Jewel extension, well, no Bitcoin's made it.
Yeah, and there's quite a few more coming out, right? Casa Node came out with
Casa
one.
has one. I know there's a couple others in the works. I just want to give a shout out to my fellow beefy Bitcoin boy Willow Burn.
Yeah, I was gonna shout out him as well. Yeah,
Love the Jewel extension and everything you're building. Keep it up, bro.
yeah. I think Casa actually reached out to him to try and come up with a unified way because he created the standard for WebLN, and it doesn't seem like it works with their APIs, and so they went a different route.
Yeah, I'm gonna. I've done this on another podcast. I'm gonna pat myself on the back. I introduced Jeremy and Will the night after you were there. The night after he demoed Lightning Jewel at BitDevs like 3 months ago.
Nice.
I had a Casa node and I couldn't use a Lightning Jewel because I wasn't able to expose my macaroons to it with the Casa setup. So I was like, Jeremy,
Help me.
Will, please talk about this. I want to use it.
Yeah, he's an awesome dev.
Yeah,
Shipping a lot.
Shipping a lot. Talk about somebody else who started Ethereum and transitioned into Lightning.
Yeah, I forget that he started in Ethereum. Yeah.
Will and James, the brothers O'Byrne, fellow beefy Bitcoin boys. This is just a reminder. Putting this on the record right now. We need to meet up and do another episode. Sorry for interrupting our episode, Andre, for that mental reminder in mid-episode.
No, that's fair. I would love to listen to that episode for sure.
Yeah. So you had the pleasure of being at Chaincode Labs with both the brothers O'Byrne during the residency.
Yeah.
And basically after your week, you came out with a sick guide on how to basically get set up and start developing on Lightning. So let's talk about that a little bit. Like, what is the best flow for a developer to go from zero to starting to write code for this shit?
Sure. So my advice to incoming devs into Lightning is to, try and learn the basics first before jumping into an abstraction. So you can definitely run your BTC Pay server that connects to your Lightning node, and all of a sudden you have a Lightning wallet, and it's fine. But you kind of missed on a lot because it's completely abstracted, and I think it's really valuable to understand a little bit more of the nuances. So one of the things that we did there was during the Lightning residencies, we needed to run essentially two Lightning nodes to talk to each other because we needed to test micropayments and microtransactions. So how did you go about doing that? And I remember the only person, well, I'm sure the mentors knew how to do it, but the only person that really was giving me some notes was Alex Bosworth. And he said, well, you can actually just do X, Y, and Z. And while a couple of people were having a lot of trouble doing that, including myself, I said, look, I'm going to solve this eventually. And it's quite hard, so I'm just going to write about it. And so after the residency, I put out this really extensive guide on how to run a RegTest Bitcoin network. So RegTest is essentially a blank slate blockchain that's super lightweight that you essentially mine fake blocks. So it's better than testnet because you don't need to sync your testnet. And then LND allows you to run two consecutive, simultaneous nodes. You can actually run as many as you want as long as you give it the correct configuration. And that took me, an hour and a half to figure out.
Yeah, it's a good point because a lot of the Lightning demonstrations is somebody on one computer screen running two nodes, just
right,
setting it between each other.
And
never thought about that.
And it's weird to develop. So I guess web development and application development is something that you do. There's usually like a development environment, which is local. Yeah, there's a development environment local, and then you have a staging environment somewhere in the cloud, and you have your production environment. It's quite cumbersome to run a local development environment for Bitcoin. Like you need your Bitcoin node running on RegTest or testnet, and then you need your Lightning node, but then you want to test against that Lightning node, so you need a counterparty Lightning node, so you need to run two nodes and so forth. It was definitely a big barrier to entry, and I said, I'm just going to make notes as I do it and as I solve it, and I'm just going to write an extensive guide on it. I think it was actually really helpful for me. I tend to believe that if you're able to teach someone something, you definitely have a really good grasp on it. And I was able to turn it into words and screenshots into this Medium guide. So I thought it was a really good, useful. It's definitely something that people have given me feedback on. It's like, hey, really great, tutorial. It definitely helped me get started. And that's the goal. It's you get started, and right away you see, oh, this tutorial only goes so far. It only gets me started. So where do I go next, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so right after that, I think 2 weeks after, I was doing decoding of Lightning invoices. So Lightning invoices have the Bolt 11 spec,
Mm-hmm.
and it's essentially a way to do those Lightning, LN, BC, and then it's the string of characters that actually means something. And so you can take that string and go to lightningdecoder.com, which is a tool that I built for myself internally to say, let me learn about these invoices. And then I realized, hey, this might be useful. Let me put it out there. So I actually launched it, and it Google Analytics says that people use it. So that's really exciting too. My goal after the Lightning residency was, can I provide some of the teachings that I learned to others in a written format or in an application format? And so far so good. I think so. Yeah.
Thanks for doing your part, man.
Yeah, man. I'm a good citizen of the network, I guess.
It's you got to have that if not me then who mentality. It's sort of what the Bent came out of in this podcast as well. But going back to like your guide on how to get started development, is something like Pierre's Node Launcher help make this easier or more understandable out of the box?
Absolutely. Pierre's Node Launcher is great. It abstracts, So I'm not even sure if it allows you to run reg test. Or whether it allows you to run two Lightning nodes. I don't want to wrongly say it one way or another. I think if you needed to, it would be able to in terms of the capabilities. But it's if you're trying to get started with Bitcoin and Lightning and you're not a very tech savvy person, definitely the node launcher is great. If you're a developer trying to get involved in actually building applications using whether it's low-level Bitcoin protocol or higher-level layer 2 Lightning Network, my guide tends to actually explain a couple things. Why do you need X, Y, and Z before doing this configuration flow?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really the audience I was trying to get. It's the development audience, not really the mom and pop who are trying to get into the network.
Yeah. No, but staying on the topic of like teaching others, that's like the beauty of fucking Bitcoin is. So that's one thing Pierre's been doing with his node launchers. If people make a pull request and it gets merged or they hit a problem with the node launcher in particular, and then they solve it, he's like not forcing people, but encouraging people to write blog posts similar to the one that you wrote, like explaining the problem they hit and how they fixed it.
Didn't Bitstein?
Yeah, Michael Bitstein.
And I love that one of the tutorials.
Michael Goldstein. I always call him Michael Bitstein.
Right. One of the tutorials I laughed, and I even tweeted at him, and I said, you do know that people are actually going to use it. So he aliased his Bitcoin D command as Bitstein D or something of that nature. And I said, look, I get it. It's great, and it's really funny. But a new dev is going to use Bitstein, and from now on, there will just be a handful of people out in the world who will be using, how do you start your node? Oh, it's Bitstein D, and that's how you get started. And that's just, it's too good. It's too good.
He might be, Michael, if you're listening, I'm not sure if you are. You are the snarky, the best snark in the industry. It's incredible.
It's great.
Your learn to code tweet at the journalist who was looking to block people, and he said if you could learn to code, you could use Twitter's API to auto block. Poetic.
Yeah, what is it with that? People are getting blocked with the learn to code thing. It's man, these Twitter Jack, listen, man.
Jack, I'll. That's what I have to figure out how to broach that subject lightly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You need to pick those questions well.
Yeah. I only got 30 minutes, so I got to get in and out.
Nice. Yeah.
I know I've been asked about it a bunch of times since I told people I'm going to do it, and people are like, you gotta ask good questions. Good questions, not tough questions.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was talking Future Jack podcast on this episode of Tales from the Crypt. But I'm trying to think of what we can end it on here. We're about an hour and 45 minutes in.
Yeah, I guess I can do a little closing remarks on the network and kind of like the things I'm excited about.
Yeah, you want to talk about Lightning 1.1, right?
Yeah, so earlier this year, a bunch of the protocol devs went to Adelaide? Australia, yeah. and essentially working through a bunch of the kinks of the network and coming up with what the 1.1 spec is. And I think ever since then, there's been, if you follow the Lightning mailing list, tons of back and forth of how to approach it. All of the different clients use different languages, and therefore it's different implementations. But there's a couple of things that I think are really, really, key for the adoption space. So number one that I think is really awesome is the idea of splicing. This notion that you have to create new channels or close channels and then recreate channels with larger capacity. I think that will cease to exist once you can splice in and out. So splicing in will essentially say, hey, I'm creating a new on-chain transaction and I'm, essentially adding these funds into the same channel. Or therefore, or similarly vice versa, you can remove, capacity from the channel. So it would mean less hops onto the main chain, and it would be just the funds are continuously usable in the network, even though you're waiting for confirmation from the chain. So that's something I'm excited about. I think if we're able to move, before that, dual funded channels is great. Big problem is you're into the Lightning Network, you have no incoming capacity when you open channels to people because people need to open channels to you. Mm-hmm. So if instead of me putting 5 Bitcoin and you putting 0, we can both put 5, then we have liquidity right away. So dual funded channels is definitely something.
Yeah, it's been a hiccup for me. Like when I open up a channel, I'm just assuming it'll be available. Like, again, idiot here. Like I was thinking like it would somehow divvy that up automatically.
Yeah, and it's pretty hard to understand why that is. And then once you get it, it's like, oh, that seems like a problem. It's not a feature. It seems like a problem because as soon as I get onboarded, I need people to connect to me, not just me connecting to others. Mm-hmm. And another one is AMP or multipath, payments. So if your channel is 100,000 satoshis and you need to pay with you, for example, and then I have another channel with 300,000, but I need to pay 300,000, 5, whatever it is. So I can actually, the software can split it. So I can send a payment through you, I can send a payment through another channel, and then they will all meet, at the end destination. Yeah. Which, if you think about a mesh network that uses sort of this onion router that's similar to Tor, it just makes perfect sense, right? So, all of that put together, I think the only other bit that I'm really excited about is the possible change of the penalty. Do you understand the penalty mechanism? Yeah. So if you try and publish a past state of your channel, you get penalized, and then you're essentially your funds get taken by your peer. Yeah. And that can be a problem. That's a feature, but it can be a problem if your node goes offline and there's a channel update, and then once you come back online, you're essentially publishing an old state, and you get penalized. So the L2 is something that was published by Christian Decker, Alaolu from Christian and Rusty from Blockstream, and Alaolu from Lightning Labs, and it's really interesting. But it does require a Bitcoin soft fork, I believe. Oh, really? Because it needs a new opcode. And that's my understanding of it. I don't believe I'm wrong, but I could be wrong. And that's where the discussion happens where,
is
Bitcoin,
it worth it?
Is Lightning part of Bitcoin to the point where it will drive the soft forks?
I don't know how I feel about that, Andre.
I don't know either. And if it's a tipping point, right? If it starts, it's a slippery slope. Yeah. Because then it'll be, Lightning needs X, Y, and Z, and then we're now pressuring Bitcoin developers to try and introduce it, even though it's not for Bitcoin. And we were just talking about ossifying the protocol, right? Yeah. Like it shouldn't change. So changes to layer 2, should it affect layer 1? That's the.
I would argue, I would probably hope not. Again, I am an ignorant rube, but yeah, that does seem. I mean, that is like a lot of the FUD against Lightning.
Yes.
Like the Urban Arsons, DeSantis's of the world, who I have a lot of respect for, but I'm saying that like Lightning could sort of bastardize the purity of the protocol level, which I would like to avoid.
I agree, 100%.
And I think, and I would argue that most Lightning developers and people building that protocol would as well.
I think the interests are aligned.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of will they remain aligned as time moves on, because Lightning does tend to move faster. And so if it's a blocker for Lightning, improvements that we need a soft fork of Bitcoin, will it be enough adoption in Lightning that now there's a pressure on the protocol and then consensus is no longer met, and now we have this, back and forth of how do we settle it. It's a problem, I think.
Yeah, and so maybe this is a good parting, though slightly depressing note, or question. Talk about what if Bitcoin fails in the long run. I think it's getting to a point where it may not, especially if it has another decade under its belt. But I think there's still a real possibility that Lightning could fail, right? It could prove to not be what we thought it would be, right?
I think it probably won't fail in the sense that it wouldn't work. I think, if anything, I would like to say a better alternative, right? So I would like to think Bitcoin is here to stay, and it won't change, and it'll remain as the native digital currency. But we don't really know the future, and the same way Satoshi came up with this, when is the next Satoshi coming out that comes up with something brand new, that's different, that's better, and uses battle tested technologies, put them together, and it's a better solution. We don't know. And so I would like to think Lightning will remain, but who are we to know? The best we can do is teach, develop, build, and see how it works.
Yeah. I guess the better question is, how could you see it failing? What would be the avenues through which you as a developer decide, hey, this actually is not what I thought it was?
From a development standpoint, I think it's doing really well. I think if there's a scenario where development tooling doesn't get quite as friendly, so from a development standpoint, that would be the only big hurdle there. I think for adoption, we've been discussing this the whole time. There's many, many hurdles to go through. All of these 1.1 updates need to happen in order for your average Joe have a phone that connects to the Lightning Network. And better wallets, better UX flows. There's a lot that needs to be done for adoption.
I would agree. But I'm optimistic. I think the pace that things are going at now is remarkable. And again, I write this in the newsletter at least once a week. Slowly but surely, Bitcoin is creeping further and further into the psyches of the masses. And it's clinging its roots. I don't think it's going anywhere.
No, the brand is too strong. Your hairdresser, your cab driver, your cook, everyone knows of it. It's just they might not know it, but they know of it.
Yeah.
And at this point, it's, the turning point is already gone, I think.
There's no turning back.
There's no turning back.
All hope is gone.
Bitcoin forever.
Yeah. So this has been a fascinating conversation. Pleasure that you decided to join me tonight. That didn't even make sense. I'm happy you decided to join me tonight. Do you have a parting note for the freaks out there, Andre?
Learn about Lightning. It's the new wave. It's miles better in terms of use cases. I think people really see it once they understand it. And, get messy. Run your node, run your full node, run your LND nodes. I'm here to help. Tons of people are here to help. Get messy and learn it, and you'll start to see the light. And from then on, I think it's just fun and games. Play Lightning chess. And hello, Koala Studio, everyone.
Koala Studio, koalastud.io.
Best domain ever.
It's a money domain. Andre, I love what you and the Koala are doing. Very big fan of Lightning Chess in particular. Thank you for coming by.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was awesome. Great discussion.
I'm sorry I drank 4 beers in front of you. I just chugged, and I feel like I took most of the 6-pack here.
I'm 2 down. That's good.
It's all good.
Yeah.
Freaks, thanks for hanging out. If you're still here, peace and love.